Welcome to the Local Marketing Podcast, brought to you by Thrive Fuel. Now, here's your host, Jason Holmes.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Local Marketing Podcast. We are Sans Jason Holmes today. Instead, you just got me, Shannon Ellisor, and
Adam Mahan right here.
All right, awesome. So as we always do before we get into the good stuff, we have to let you know what we're drinking. Why don't you start on that, Adam?
I will be glad to take that away because I picked this up over the weekend. It is, of course, I'm a big fan of Hendrick's gin.
Yeah.
I know Jason is usually the gin drinker.
No, that's not true. I love gin too.
Well, for the podcast. I don't think I've seen him drink anything else other than gin. But this is like their lunar variant, which on the bottle they recommend making a cocktail with ginger ale and lemon. And let me tell you, that stuff is delicious.
That sounds awesome.
I'm just keeping it classy with my Texas mug here.
You and Amanda and drinking cocktails and beers in your mugs.
There's something about it. I don't know.
So I'm going extremely low key. I am drinking an NA craft beer, which if you know me, you're going to be like, what? Back in the day, NA beers, non-alcoholic beers were, pardon my vulgarity, horse piss. They were terrible. But you've got those that are craft enthusiasts that are getting into NAs now. So this is actually from Athletic Brewing. It's their golden ale called Upside Dawn. And it's good, but what's even better is their hazy IPA, but I drank all of those. So we're going to go with this now. The reason why I'm going NA right now is because it's fair season. So my husband and I spend every weekend for 8 weeks at Sherwood Forest Fair, where there is a plethora of craft beer and mead and Loki and wine. And I have to detox during the week.
I may or may not have been out with you one of those weekends and have seen firsthand what it is that you speak of.
Yeah, exactly. So I've given my liver a break, but it's tasty stuff. So we're going to get into Jason's interview with Gary Moore. Gary has been in the kind of broadcasting, print, digital media technology space for 40 plus years. And he has quite a story to tell, because you think about all the disruption that has happened in the world of media, print and broadcast in the last 30 years. He's experienced all of that. And he's been on the forefront of a lot of fantastic technologies that were kind of nascent at the time, that are big names now. And he got to be on the front end of that. So we're going to let Jason take it away.
Well, it's great to be with you, Jason, with you, your team, and all. I watch with interest from out here in California as you're expanding your business. For everybody here, my name's Gary Moore. I'm president of two companies. One is Local Broadcast Sales, and that's where we serve TV and radio stations nationwide. We'll get into a few more details, I would think, on that in a little bit. Secondly, the other company is called Inside Edge, and that's kind of evolved into a totally personality-based selling and also hiring tools and things on that line. A very interesting line of work. And the nice thing about that, having that as a business, is that any business in the country is a target.
Right.
Because everybody has people issues. And Jason, if you have two people or more working together, that's usually the number one issue, is how do you help the individuals work together. So we have tools to do that. Hopefully a little bit of knowledge that's helpful. And we also do some media work under Inside Edge, particularly when we're working with newspapers in particular, and also digital companies.
Awesome. So you've been doing this a long time. I followed your work from the beginning. I think since I started in the media, over 25 years ago. So tell me a little bit about how you ended up, not only with these two companies, but how you got your start in the media and then in advertising and marketing.
Yeah, very good. Well, Jason, I was highly educated to be in the media world because I was a beach lifeguard and here in San Diego, and I was excellent at swimming and I was excellent at getting tan. But the summer was coming to an end, and I had been a beach lifeguard and a pool lifeguard for about 4 years in the city of Oceanside, which is in San Diego County, about 10 miles from here. And with that, the newspaper came down, the leader of the newspaper came down while I was at the beach. And here I am in a swimsuit and a white t-shirt. And he goes, "Have you ever thought of getting into sales?" And I looked at him and I said, "No." And he goes, "Well, I hear you're a good guy. I'd like to see if maybe we can work something out." So we interviewed. Like I said, I was coming at the end of the summer. So I looked at it, Jason, just kind of like this. I thought, this will be interesting. We'll see how that works out. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, I'll come down to the beach again. I can do that.
Yeah.
And so what happened was I got hired into selling, and ironically, Jason, where they put me, and this is in North San Diego County, Oceanside, Carlsbad Vista area. Ironically, they put me in with auto dealers. I didn't know the first thing about selling. The only thing I knew is I had gone to school with almost all their kids.
Oh, wow.
And so they knew me, and they showed me mercy. Yes, I'm saying car dealer and mercy in the same sentence. And I really learned a whole lot from the clients. I probably learned more from the clients than I did the newspaper on what to do. But the reason why I mention that, Jason, is that why I have another company that has to do with personalities and getting along with people. I happen to think that's one of the most important things in any business you're in. I'm not downplaying the importance of knowledge, and I have lots of knowledge in a lot of different things, but I have to say that truthfully, the relationships is what really made a significant difference. Mm-hmm. So after being in the business for 5 years, and then I got into newspaper management, then I went up to Santa Monica, worked for a newspaper there. Then I went to Houston, which was a big jump, had about 100 employees there. And by the time I left, I'd worked up a little bit more. And so we had about 130 employees at that time. And I learned a lot about managing, but really kind of learned it, again, the hard way. We had some training there, but most of it was hands-on. And then I got contacted by the Sacramento Bee. And back then in the newspaper world, the Sacramento Bee was something that was a real interesting thought. So McClatchy, and so I went there and interviewed, and they hired me there. And I was with McClatchy for 10 years, and I had several different positions there, up to and including 1 year they had me do traveling around the country for a national network that we're just setting up called the Newspaper Network, which ironically I almost bought later when they sold it. And that was really interesting because I was selling all the newspapers around the country and setting up networks. So your territory was defined by how the advertiser defined that. Mm-hmm. And so after that, I got a call from the San Diego Union-Tribune. I knew somebody in their HR department. I'd worked with him in Modesto one time with McClatchy, and they needed somebody to come in there. And the main thing, and there's a purpose for me mentioning this, the main thing is they wanted a manager who could connect with the 300 salespeople in the department. And I looked at it, being born and raised in San Diego, I said, this is a pretty good offer. By that time, my wife and I, we have 11 children.
Wow.
And make it clear to your audience that we are not Catholic and we're not Mormon, but we do have 11 children, and it was an opportunity to come back home, get the kids near their grandparents, all that. But there's really no better place to live in the country than San Diego County. I mean, it's wonderful. So at the Union-Tribune, also I was responsible for a delivery program that delivered down in Mexico. And what we delivered was just inserts. And that turned out to be a huge moneymaker. We also did a lot of stuff in digital. I mentioned to you just off the cuff, which you didn't know, we actually were the company that ultimately built Realtor.com actually started at the San Diego Union-Tribune. So we took that product, refined it, did everything with that, which was really great, a great opportunity to get into the digital world deeper. And then after that, I decided I was going to start my own business. And in starting my own business, our oldest son had finished college. And I said, well, you know what? My wife homeschooled him his whole life. I said, now I get to work with him. And so I literally probably left the best job in San Diego County to start my own business. A little bit nuts with that big of a family and all those responsibilities, but I was pretty confident we could do pretty well. Mm-hmm. And during that time, I actually filled in. I was contacted by the Dallas Morning News, so I went there and ran their ad department for 6 months while they searched, and then they wanted me to take that job, but I was really into our own thing. Mm-hmm. But then they had me come back 6 months later, and I was actually vice president of the interactive division, which was just starting to be built, and they were one of the forerunners with that, and that was a great experience to be there. And I also came back and helped them operate their Spanish language newspapers. And then I got into after that consulting work. Mm-hmm. And really, Jason, it really all came down to relationships. That's how I was able to build really both businesses. Mm-hmm. But I really got into TV because of Bilo, who at the time owned the TV stations and the Dallas Morning News, that they were looking for not only things to do in the newspaper side, which I did, but they also wanted me to go into the television side and start selling and working with managers at stations. So what happened through that, Jason, is that I kind of transitioned by pure luck into broadcast really at the appropriate time. This was in the mid 2000s, 2006, 2007. And so I started doing an academy each month, or excuse me, each year for the New York State Broadcasters Association, where we got for 2 weeks, myself and another guy, we got to train salespeople. That's all they did. They came, stayed in hotels. We had them for 2 weeks, and it was a very, very interesting experience, one that I learned a whole lot more about the broadcast world, what goes on there. And I got involved with Local Broadcast Sales, which is the company I own now, and became one of their first trainers on there. And then about 5 years later, the owner of it called me up one day and said, hey, you're the first guy I'm talking to, first one I thought of. Would you and Eric like to buy this company? And the long and the short of it is, Eric and I said, this would be a great thing for us to do. We haven't looked back. It's been wonderful.
That's great. What year was that you purchased the Local Broadcast?
That was about 7 years ago.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. I'd known you always with Inside Edge and the kind of consulting and placement type work and things like that. And I think some coaching through that.
Yes.
What's funny, I didn't hear any radio experience, which I kind of thought you had just because your voice is so good. I figured that you were you'd come up on the radio side or something like that.
Yeah, really. Well, when you have 11 kids, you have to raise your voice once in a while. So,
with
authority.
That's practice. Right. Okay, got it. So in that whole transition, like when you went from, being a surfer, hanging out at the beach, and then you go into sales, and the auto dealers are notoriously sharks. Sharks aren't only at the beach. They're at your local auto dealers, especially back then, right? Because things were a lot different. And you learned a lot from them. Was there another? Where else do you think you learned the sales profession and really understanding that?
I still believe this today, Jason. You probably have seen this happen when we've worked together over the years. I learned the most from the customers. And first of all, it was the customers. And I say that, and I don't mean that to sound like a textbook answer. It's the absolute truth. Remember, I went in knowing nothing. I really didn't know anything. But I did know how to win people over and get them to trust me. And with that, I would do a lot of, I'd stop by and just talk to customers about their business, try to understand it. How does advertising tie in with that? what have they liked about advertising, not liked? What have they liked coming from the media companies? What would they like to see? And I just did a lot of listening. Now,
Mhm.
keep in mind, in this town, Oceanside, I also went to school with a lot of the retailer kids.
Mhm.
And so it made it pretty simple. It was kind of a ready-made opportunity. If I keep my ears open, I could have learned a whole lot. And so that did. And then I had a couple of mentors in the industry,
Mhm.
and those mentors couldn't get me off their phone. I'd be calling them up all the time. And there was one who happened to live in Oceanside for a while, and he had his own company. And I'd go down there like 7 or 8 at night and just talk to him about business and how does it work and what should I be doing, what makes sense. And he used to love me to come down there, but he used to tell one of his friends, who was a friend of mine, he used to say, I love Gary, but I can't get any work done from 8 o'clock on because Gary's here trying to learn more. And so I soaked it up like a sponge, and I found that was important. The second area, Jason, which is going to sound kind of strange from somebody like me, probably, who, in Dallas, I was responsible for 400 people. At the Union-Tribune, I had 300 people, and I learned a boatload of stuff from salespeople.
Mhm.
And when you work in a big organization like that, you have a lot of managers. So, like in San Diego, I had 29 managers. And so I spent a lot of time with the managers, but I spent more time with the salespeople. I found that's where I could find out what were we doing right and what was it, what were we doing wrong and what was that, and what should we be doing. And so throughout my career, it's a little bit odd for being a media guy because while I started out in newspapers, as you heard,
Mhm.
heck, I started in digital with something you don't even know about. I'll have to give you a little history one day about that. Audio text. You ever heard of
Mhm.
that?
I have heard of it, but I was just slightly before my time.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Well, I'll have to tell you sometime about those experiences. But in a nutshell, audio text is nothing more than you pick up your phone and then you have a directory and you say, okay, I want medical. And then you punch in a number and then, okay, what do you want to know about? Oh, diabetes. Okay, boom, boom, boom. And then you'd listen. The user would
Right.
listen. Well, we'd sell advertising before and after the
Right.
uh, the deal on there, and that was kind of the first introduction to what I would call digital. Uh, However, when I started at the Oceanside newspaper, they owned a company, and they were the first ones to put all of the classified ads in a computer
Mhm.
and directly into a database
Mhm.
because back in those days you did it differently. So I really started with computer digital involvement from there, but those were things that really helped make a difference. But without beyond a shadow of a doubt, anybody who has salespeople that works for them spend time there.
Yeah.
Anytime I went consulting and I go consulting anywhere, guess who I talk to, Jason?
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to who's running the station or who's running the newspaper. I don't even want to talk to their top management.
Yeah.
I want to talk to the salespeople. That's where you find out what's really happening.
That's interesting. So the customer facing folks who are hearing the struggles of local businesses, hearing, that they're probably coming back from calls that day, talking to you, telling you what they heard from their potential customers. And a lot of times
And
that doesn't
our weekly,
filter up.
yes, I'm sorry, in our weekly sales meetings, Jason, big part of the conversation. What are the advertisers saying?
Mhm.
And instead of any of your listeners who, I'm sick and tired of hearing what our customers want. I've got a product. I want to sell them that.
Mhm.
I never approached customers that way. I got excited when a customer told me what either frustrated them about our company or another company's because I came away going, opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can solve that for them, then you can help them grow their business, and you've got a partner rather than just a client, right? That's buying a
Yes.
product from you. Tell me a
Right.
little bit. So realtor.com, as you mentioned, coming out of the San Diego Union-Tribune, how did that happen? And how did that evolve into what it is now?
Right. Very good. Well, I can't take credit for it, Jason. They signed the contract before I got there
Okay.
to come up with an application for realtors. Now, I kind of took it from there and implemented it. and got it implemented. And it was a perfect timing. If any of your listeners know anything about what was going on in the realtor business in the old days, do you remember? You're too young for this stuff, Jason. Do you remember the book where all the houses were in?
I do remember that. Yeah, I do remember
Yes.
that. And my very first exposure to it was like looking at my first homes, and they guarded that book with their lives. It was just, that was the MLS, and you weren't allowed to like have a copy or anything.
That's exactly right. You had to call a realtor. And right in the middle of that time changing is when we were coming up with a digital solution, which was going to have all of the listings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to deal with, and my team had to deal with, a whole lot about people resisting the change.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's one thing to have your staff resist the change. It's a whole other thing when your customers are resisting the change,
Sure.
but they know they need it. And so what we did back then in the old days, back when I had black hair, back in those days, what you would do is you talk to the broker. So you had maybe, even in a big town like San Diego, you had like 60 big advertisers, 60 people, you'd go and get their advertising. Well, all of a sudden we were going agent by agent. Now today that doesn't sound that big of a deal, but it was huge back then. And so we started going with agent packages to get them to sell their listings to get put in. And then also we tied it in this case, it was with newspaper, but I do the exact same with radio or TV with packages. But it was really the beginning of a pretty interesting thing. Well, what happened? Remember, I didn't sign the contract at the paper for this. We did not sign a paper that said, if it moves on anywhere else, we get any residual from it.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Well, this is early. This is in the 1997.
Right.
It was just early. And I'm not saying I would have been any wiser and gotten that, but hindsight, I'd say, yeah, I would have. But anyway, that person said, oh, we're going to go do another project. And they turned us over to another company. Wow. Well, what was ironic is they went to work with what is called, if you look at it, Home Store. It actually became a big legal nightmare because all of the realtors all over the country were fighting this because of losing that little book that you were talking about. And this enabled them to be able to do it. And so that was a very interesting project. And then we also did something with automotive in the 90s, which was very impressive. I think we had 88 dealers back before the year 2000 online with their inventory. Unheard of. Unheard of.
Now, was that through cars.com or was that through another platform?
No, that's another platform called Pentawave. And by the way, I was president of that company for 6 months as they were transitioning after I started a business, after I started our business. I was doing that 3 days a week over in Phoenix, and really a brilliant company. They had a lot of good stuff, but what was happening is that a lot of the newspapers were ganging up and making their own platform like cars.com. Yeah, but Pentawave was actually better. And I'll tell you what they could do back then. You put in the VIN number, they could get all of the equipment that's on the car. You say, well, that's no big deal, Gary. It was a big deal then.
Right.
I mean, nobody could do that. The other thing is you could reverse publish. So you could collect all the cars and then reverse publish them in your classified without a person handling the ad.
Right.
It was unbelievable. And it was terrific. Well, I lined up that company to sell actually to Gannett. Part of their applications is Gannett's first run into digital. And that was probably about 2000 or 2001.
Wow. Yeah. So you have the automotive space, you have the real estate space. And then I know the San Diego Union-Tribune, it might've been right after you would have started your company, or maybe they were working on it at the same time, but they were a career cast locate or had an investment or something, or had used the platform Career Cast on the employment side. That was something else. So
yeah, the other thing San Diego was one of the first was on the dating lines.
Right.
One of the very first. And San Diego, even though it's in California, is ultra conservative, particularly back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it was a very good service that also did quite well. So quietly, the Union-Tribune did a lot of stuff on digital that in the early days.
Wow. So was Realtor.com a separate company at the time that then licensed the technology to the Union-Tribune and then pulled that away later, or how did that?
No, it was a separate company, a developer. A developer worked with us at the Union-Tribune. We'd say, hey, we want this, could use that, got it out in the field, came back and pieced it all together. But that was a separate developer.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time he said, look, I'm going to be working on another project, well, no fooling, I don't blame you. Mm-hmm. But they introduced us to another company. But what was really good about that too, and it helped me, Jason, not become a staunchy newspaper person, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
I don't know if that's a fair word, but a lot of people in our industry, I respect a ton of them. I respect anybody in any industry,
Mm-hmm.
all your customers, anybody who's still in business doing whatever they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, there were a lot of people who would be closed-minded and saying, well, there's no print here and it doesn't tie in with print.
Right.
You'll talk to them today and they'll say they were forward thinking, but they weren't.
Right.
And, I was one of the nutty guys.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing messing with that for?
Yep.
And I'll tell you the reason why I messed with it. It isn't because I fell in love with the technology, which I see a lot happening today. Be glad to talk about that if you want to go down that path.
Yeah.
It was because the advertisers needed it. That's why. And when I saw that, well, this is where the advertisers are going. We have two choices here, Jason. We can sit here and suck this thing dry. And back then, papers are very, very profitable,
Right.
incredibly profitable. Or what we can do is we can help them and partner with them and be their partner as they also start practicing with different mediums. And I do look at all digital as another medium.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my definition of it. And so when I saw that, you know what, some users want to go to a computer. They want to be able to see those homes they couldn't see before when that real estate book was here. This is solid gold. We can do a lot with this. And it really introduced us. It was like having a whole new category to go after, because again, you'd never talk to, you might talk to 5 agents or less in the entire county about advertising. Now we could talk to all of them.
Right.
It's like a whole new business. And a lot of people didn't see that.
Yeah, they miss the opportunity. They see the threat, but not the opportunity that afforded them. And I think
Right.
what happened later was when it really kind of changed overall is when newspapers weren't the only portable media anymore. So as soon as the iPhone and smartphones really took off and are usable, and you've got all of the information, any type of information at your fingertips within seconds, that just completely changed the dynamic. So,
well, that's true from your vantage point, because you're 19 years old, but let an older guy give you a little bit different perspective.
Sure.
Newspapers started losing it back in about around the 60s. Believe it or not, because what started happening was these little freebie things were popping up, and these little freebie magazines. And I'll tell you, the majority of their money came directly out of newspapers. Now, back then, Jason, okay, so we lost 5%. Mm-hmm. No big deal. We could barely feel it. Mm-hmm. Well, all of a sudden, there were a lot of 5%ers out there. Mm-hmm. And it got so big, Auto Trader, for instance, became a huge monster.
Right.
Huge monster. And that was before computers. So what happened is newspapers took their defense on how they handled print competitors, which you can't do, but that's what they did.
Right.
And therefore they took that strategy as digital started picking up. Problem is, when you're talking about another print giveaway, Jason, you can use a lot of that strategy. When you're talking about digital, you cannot.
Right.
And newspapers that missed the opportunity of saying digital is now as common to us as print.
Right.
And you know who drives where the money goes? The advertiser does.
Yep.
If you've got an innovative, forward-thinking advertiser, more of their percentage is going to go into digital. The part I could never understand by most was one of the first publishers I worked for said, you know what, Gary, $1's $1. However you bring it in.
Mm-hmm.
And I used that throughout my whole career of going, don't be so concerned that there's only this. That's why you want to have, a broader look.
Right.
Now we're at a point to where newspapers, and some did okay, some did not do so well with that. Some have transitioned, okay. Now we have broadcast, which has a wonderful opportunity, because when it comes to digital, broadcasters, radio and TV, can be the real front runner in their markets.
Mm-hmm.
They can be the huge front runner. And before you call me crazy, Jason, does Thrive Fuel wish they could wake up tomorrow morning, and I'm just going to pick a number, I'm at 30,000.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you wish you had access to a database of 30,000 that you didn't have to pay anything more for?
Absolutely. Why not?
Would you like to wake up with that?
Absolutely.
And so all TV and radio stations, for anybody who's listening, but they have already heard me on my own platform, and they hear me all the time. They turn me off all the time. Is that, you have so much that every one of your competitors would love to have, but more importantly, you have so much that's of value to your clients. And if instead of sitting there trying to protect whatever your little hive happens to be, that you begin to realize, I'm selling audience. I'm selling audience and consumers. And that's why my company recently, by the way, we started offering research that doesn't sell the radio station, doesn't sell the TV station. It sells the market. And it's from the consumer's perspective that you can take, if you're a TV radio station, that you can take to your customer and say, here's what's happening in the market. And here's who's saying in the next year they're going to buy a bicycle.
Right.
Okay. And there's this many in our market. And all of a sudden now, who's positioned as the pro to get the majority of the budget? Whoever brought them that data, walked them through it. And one thing I've never fully understood, Jason, is some people will say, if I sell anything other than broadcast, or I sell anything other than print, then I failed.
Yeah. Well,
and I kind of go, wait a minute, let me get the right definition here and go back to any dollar somebody spends with you is $1 for your company. So use it wisely.
Right. No, it's always been a huge problem in the industry. It's why I'm really, as you said, having access to the audience is such a valuable asset, but it's a reason that the misuse of that access, I guess, throughout the industry has been something to watch, and probably why companies like Thrive Fuel exist now is just, we've got to do it a different way, but it's sad to think about the opportunities squandered over the years, especially by newspapers. And now it looks like, some broadcasters are taking advantage of it and of their position, and some are kind of trying to, circle the wagons and save what they have. So right. History repeats itself. And also, I mean, we had an advertiser come in today to talk to the team, a good customer. And we're seeing it happen even with digital solutions. So he's a local business owner. He sees the world a little bit differently. He's probably mid 40s, looks at it and says, look, the old people are on Facebook. I need to reach a younger audience. So now he's saying that the younger audience isn't on Facebook, they're on Instagram and they're on TikTok. So it's just kind of, happening again, that the audience migrates to the newer platforms. And
That's right.
That's just a cycle that we seem to repeat.
Well, I would recommend anybody listening, any of your customers, any of your peers, that, digital, I look at digital different than you do.
Mhm.
I think digital's traditional. I've been messing with it for 30 years.
Yeah.
You ever heard of Prodigy?
Oh yeah.
I use Prodigy. And you know what was really exciting about Prodigy? That night I could write in about the Sacramento Kings basketball team. I go, boy, I had a great game. Bill Russell's come to be coach. Isn't that great? And the next morning I had an answer, Jason, from other people. It was amazing. And I'm going, this is interesting, which now you'd laugh at it.
Right.
But Prodigy, American Online, now I'm mentioning names that many of the people you work with don't even know who they are.
Sure.
They were the answer. Well, guess what? There are future answers right there that every one of you could be a part of. And retailers, don't be afraid of new stuff. Ask the right questions. Make sure it is your consumer or your potential consumer is who's picking up.
Right.
Because one view on one social media is not equal to one view on another.
Right. Yep.
And I think that's where people miss that.
Yeah. I mean, it's, Prodigy, AOL, CompuServe, all of those early bulletin board systems, just the forerunners to what we have. And what seems to happen is a new platform comes out, national advertisers and marketers take advantage of it first, and then it trickles down to local. And by the time it trickles down to local, the local advertiser or marketer is just lost. They've been outmaneuvered by their national larger competitors who have now aced this platform. And so that's what ThriveFuel does, is try to help local businesses compete with those huge national and regional companies. But it's tough because they don't have in-house marketing teams. They don't have an in-house strategists. So that's really where we come into play, as long as they're keeping an open mind and not doing what they've always done.
You're absolutely right. Where you are, you're not going to like this, Jason.
Yeah.
Where you are is where all those traditional media companies were. You have opportunities, you have solutions to help the small retailer, middle retailer stand out in this world of, what's still the hardest thing, standing out amongst all the big national advertisers.
Right.
Guess what? That's only been around since I've been around.
That's
been a challenge.
Yeah.
And I really think that I was able to benefit from it. I was able to raise a family of 11, live in Southern California.
Yeah.
I've lived a good life thanks to media. I think the next generation below me and the one below that's the best time to be in the media world. There's going to be so many opportunities. And guess what? Everybody's really getting more confused than they are getting more to understand it.
That's very true. There's fewer people who really know how to market and really know how to stand out, because the tools have become so easy to use, so seemingly easy, but you just become, it becomes everybody looks the same, or everybody's doing the same things online. So it's difficult to stand out. But
yes.
So let's talk about Insight Edge for just a moment. I know you did through that company more of the recruiting, coaching, and placement of folks. Is that still and also things like personality tests and finding good fits for media companies and other clients? Is that still kind of the bread and butter of Insight Edge?
Yeah, that's a part of Insight Edge, but it's now broader, because, as I mentioned at the very beginning, any company that has hiring needs can benefit from it. So you don't necessarily have to be a media company, a digital company, or anything. But we do have the tools to be able to match up a job, because jobs have personalities.
Right.
And you're able to line that up and see who has the most natural skill set matchup. Now, does it always mean if you rated number 1 out of 5 people for that job that you should hire number 1? No, because you have the dynamics of the work culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where most people miss when it comes to hiring.
Right.
It's not that hard to hire a competent person. It's not that hard to hire somebody who knows the ins and outs of things. What's hard to do, Jason, is to find somebody who thinks forward thinking this way, but has to work in organizations that aren't forward thinking. They think they are, but they're not. And so what these tools help you do is it lets you know beforehand, okay, you've got a real maverick here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 2 things you can do with this real maverick. You can either set them up to win or you can set them up to lose. Simple enough. And how are you going to set them up to win? By probably not following how you run your business normally.
Right. Yeah.
But what you can do is you can say, or I'm going to ask the kind of questions to the person coming in because I can't let them be a maverick. And there are a lot of companies that way. And so you go, okay, well, Jim, you seem to like to work independent, make your own decisions. Yes, I do. Here's why. Well, how does that fit into the rest of the organization? How do you not tear it up when that happens?
Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden you now have wiser questions that you can ask when you're going through an interview process. The others is that we teach companies how to sell to their consumers. Because let's just use me and you. You and I, we have different personalities. Actually, we've got some that are alike, but we have some that aren't as well.
Sure.
And so for you and I to communicate best, it isn't the way I want to do it. It's not the way you want to do it. What I should do is be sensitive to you on how you want to receive that information. If I learn that on customers, I can be dropped into your market right now, Jason. I'll beat some of your salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you think it's because I'm so good looking, but that's not why. It really has to do with because I can assess individuals and I can say, I know this person likes to have lots of data and information before they make a decision. I also know they won't say yes on the first call, so I'm not even going to ask them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to close them a little differently. I'm going to say to them after the first call, you ever hear the thing always be closing?
ABC.
Yeah, works sometimes.
Right.
Doesn't work so well other times. If the person's analytical, don't think you're going to do it on the first call. Not going to happen. I don't care how many times you try it, and then you probably won't have a second call. But what I would do to that person is say, I've given you so much information here today. I know you're going to want to think about it. Now listen to this, Jason. Let's get together next week because you'll have several more questions once you review the information. Is that okay with you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, they're starting to trust me a whole lot more than somebody who's going, well, before I go, and just this week, if you buy now, I can get you a little bit of a better deal.
Right.
So that's where the real power is in the stuff that we do with the personality things. But we have regional managers that are of Walmart here in Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
They don't buy training. They'll bring us in because they see, I want my managers at every one of the stores to know how to work with their managers.
Right.
And then what happens is their manager says, I want this in my store and I want to do it with my management team, right? So that's a very different thing than working with media companies, but it's just as applicable in any of your clients' businesses or anything else. Does that make sense?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's very important. I mean, the biggest problems in business are all related to personnel, right? And how those
there you go.
Building the right team that can work together and communicate effectively, and not have a lot of drama or any as much as possible. That's right. all super important. It's difficult to do when you have a diverse team, but the most important thing really to key to success. So no, I appreciate that. And so our viewers and listeners, they can get there or learn more at insightedge.com, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Insightedge.com.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today, Gary. I've been wanting to have you on the show, and I hope you'll do it again sometime. It's interesting to hear a perspective like yours that's, kind of seen I'd say the industry of media in general through the most disruptive times in its existence. So is there anything else you'd like our audience to hear or know about?
Well, no, I appreciate you asking me, and I love watching how you're progressing along. And I'm one of your biggest reading fans when you send out those emails.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Gary. Well, we will end it there and talk again soon.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right, and we're back. And this is the part of the show where Adam and I wax philosophical about what we just saw. And, the big takeaway for me was that, Gary has spent basically his entire career working in the belly of innovation, right? Of technology and media and marketing. He worked in interactive media for papers before it was even called digital. He was a grower in that space. What he had to say about the San Diego Union-Tribune project, that was the precursor to Realtor.com. I mean, that was groundbreaking. I mean, that's technologies that we still use today, and that has there's been all of these offspring because of that with Zillow and Trulia. It absolutely disrupted and changed the way that we shop for houses now.
Exactly.
Even looking at rent houses. That audio text, that voice directory service, that was around for a hot minute, but I vaguely remember that as a kid. And then also the that online dealer inventory platform that he was doing in the 90s, it was an early competitor to cars.com, both of those technologies being really nascent. So I thought those were some pretty cool stories.
Very much. And so for me, one of the big things that I've really come to enjoy with a lot of these interviews, right? And this one with Gary Moore just topped it off and really cemented it for me is, of course, compared to yourself and Jason and a lot of others on our team, I still feel relatively new, young, in just marketing as a whole, not so much digital marketing, but just the marketing world in general. And so being able to hear these stories of people's experiences back in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, right? When I wasn't even existing and when I was, still doing the Dewey Decimal System in elementary school, right? But hearing about these things that were happening and then their experiences as technologies changed, as times changed, as consumer habits and trends change. It's just such an interesting thing for me. But one of the things that he said that was just my key takeaway was, you have to be forward thinking, right? And so one of the common threads of a lot of these people that have been around for so long and continue to be relevant today is the fact that they do think forward. What is happening now and what is happening now going to cause tomorrow to look like, right? And so, the interactive media, like you were talking about, right? They already knew something was happening. Let's start, getting on top of it and making moves today. And I think that really ought to humble us and inspire and motivate us as marketers in 2022 to think what's coming, what is changing. We can't grow complacent because we've seen traditional media by and large just crumble, wanting to stick to the status quo.
Well,
that was for me.
And kind of like what he said, digital, he now considers traditional. Digital has been around almost 40 years.
Right.
It's not the new kid on the block anymore. When you've got a guy that's in his, I would imagine, early 70s, and the bulk of his career he had his hands in technologies and digital applications and things. This isn't the new kid. The new kid is Metaverse Web 3.
Right.
Digital is about to be, that's where all the old people are at. Kind of the Web 2. So anyway, all right, awesome. Well, it was a fun show, and we'll catch all you guys next time on the Local Marketing Podcast.